The ocean had always been Evelyn Marsh's first love. Even as a child growing up in the coastal town of Baybridge, she would stand on the rocky shore and watch the waves crash against the cliffs. The water was never the same twice. Sometimes it was calm and peaceful, reflecting the blue sky like a mirror. Other times it was angry and wild, throwing white foam high into the air. Her father was a lighthouse keeper, and her mother worked at the harbor office. Evelyn learned to respect the sea from both of them. Her father taught her about tides, currents, and the power of storms. Her mother showed her charts and maps, explaining how ships navigated the dangerous waters along the coast. The ocean gives life, her father would say, but it can also take life away. You must always respect it, never fear it, but never take it lightly either. Evelyn took these words to heart. When she was 18 years old, she joined the Coast Guard Academy. It was 1975, and there were not many women in the service. Some people doubted her. Some people said she was too small, too young, too female for such dangerous work. But Evelyn proved them all wrong. She was smart. She studied hard and learned everything she could about navigation, weather patterns, maritime law, and rescue techniques. She was strong too. She trained her body to be fit and capable. She could swim in rough waters, climb ropes, and work for hours without rest when necessary. But most importantly, Evelyn had something that could not be taught in any academy. She had courage. Not the foolish kind of courage that makes people take unnecessary risks. No. Evelyn had the calm, steady courage that allows a person to make clear decisions in the middle of chaos. After graduating from the academy, Evelyn spent her 20s and 30s working on various Coast Guard vessels. She participated in countless rescue operations. She saved people from sinking boats, from overturned kayaks, from swimming accidents. She helped enforce fishing regulations and protected the coastline from illegal activities. By the time she was 40 years old, Evelyn had earned the respect of everyone who worked with her. She had a natural talent for leadership. She could organize teams, make quick decisions, and stay calm under pressure. These qualities led to her promotion to commander. As Commander Marsh, Evelyn led a team of 60 men and women at the Baybridge Coast Guard Station. This was one of the busiest stations along the entire eastern coast. The waters around Baybridge were known for sudden storms, dangerous currents, and heavy shipping traffic. It was challenging work, but Evelyn loved every moment of it. Her team respected her deeply. She was firm but fair. She demanded excellence from everyone, but she also cared about each person as an individual. She knew their families, their dreams, their fears. When someone made a mistake, she corrected them with patience. When someone did exceptional work, she made sure they received recognition. Commander Marsh became known throughout the Coast Guard as one of the finest leaders in the service. She received several awards and commendations. Newspapers wrote articles about her successful rescues. Young people who wanted to join the Coast Guard would say, "I want to be like Commander Marsh." Evelyn had found her purpose in life. Every morning when she put on her uniform, she felt proud. Every time her team saved a life, she felt fulfilled. She had a career she loved, colleagues who respected her, and the satisfaction of knowing she made a difference in the world. She never married. There had been a few relationships over the years, but none of them lasted. Evelyn's work was demanding. She was often away on missions or had to respond to emergencies at all hours. Most people could not understand her dedication to the service. But Evelyn did not mind being alone. She had her work, her team, and the ocean. That was enough. By the time she reached 53 years old, Evelyn had served in the Coast Guard for 35 years. She was thinking about retirement, but not seriously yet. She still felt strong and capable. She planned to serve for at least another 5 or 6 years before she would finally step back and let younger officers take over. But fate had other plans. It was October 15th, 2000. Evelyn would remember that date for the rest of her life. The day had started normally enough. The weather forecast predicted strong winds and rain for the evening, but nothing unusual for this time of year. The Coast Guard station was prepared for a busy night. All equipment was checked and ready. The team was briefed and alert. Evelyn spent the afternoon in her office, completing paperwork and reviewing schedules. Around 4 in the afternoon, her deputy commander, Lieutenant Frank Morrison, knocked on her door. "Commander, the Weather Service just updated their forecast," Frank said. "The storm is intensifying faster than expected. They're now predicting winds up to 70 miles per hour and waves reaching 20 feet. Evelyn looked up from her papers. "Has everyone been notified? All vessels?" "Yes, ma'am. We've sent out warnings on all channels. Most boats are already heading back to harbor." "Most?" Evelyn stood up. "Which ones aren't?" Frank checked his tablet. "We have confirmation that the Northern Star is still out there. They're a commercial fishing vessel about 40 miles northeast of here. The captain radioed that they're securing their equipment and heading back, but they're having engine trouble. They're moving slowly." Evelyn frowned. She knew the Northern Star. It was an older boat, maybe 35 years old. The captain, Roger Hensley, was an experienced fisherman, but he was also known for taking risks. He often stayed out longer than was safe, trying to catch more fish. "Keep monitoring them," Evelyn ordered, "and prepare the rescue boat. If they get into trouble, we need to be ready to go immediately." "Already done, Commander." As evening approached, the storm hit with surprising force. The wind howled around the Coast Guard station, rattling windows and doors. Rain pounded against the roof like thousands of tiny hammers. Through the windows, Evelyn could see the ocean transforming into a chaotic mass of dark water and white foam. At 7:30, the radio crackled to life. It was the Northern Star. Coast Guard, this is Northern Star. We need assistance. Engine failure. Taking on water. Position is..." The voice was interrupted by static and the sound of wind. Evelyn grabbed the radio microphone. "Northern Star, this is Commander Marsh. I copy engine failure and taking on water. How many people on board?" There was a pause filled with static. Then, "6 people, Commander. We have 6 people. The pump is working, but water is coming in faster. We're trying to seal the breach, but..." More static. "Northern Star, maintain radio contact. We're launching rescue boat now." "What is your exact position?" The captain gave their coordinates. Evelyn's heart sank. The Northern Star was 42 miles out, in some of the roughest water along the coast. In this storm, it would take at least 2 hours to reach them, maybe more. "All crew to stations!" Evelyn called out. "We have a distress call. Northern Star, 6 people on board, taking on water." Her team moved into action with practiced efficiency. Everyone knew their role. The rescue boat, a 47-foot motor lifeboat, was designed to handle extreme conditions. It was unsinkable and self-righting, capable of operating in the worst weather. But even this specialized vessel would be tested in tonight's storm. Evelyn assigned her best crew to the mission. Lieutenant Morrison would lead the operation. With him would go Petty Officers Sarah Chen, Marcus Johnson, and David White, plus seaman recruit Jessica Torres. All were experienced, all were skilled, and all understood the risks. But Evelyn made a decision that would haunt her forever. She decided not to go with them. As commander, she could have gone. She had the authority to lead any mission she chose. But she also had the responsibility to manage the station and coordinate all operations. If other emergencies arose during the night, she needed to be there to respond. It was the logical decision. It was the correct decision according to all protocols and procedures. But later, much later, Evelyn would wonder if things might have been different if she had been on that boat. "Frank," Evelyn said to Lieutenant Morrison as the crew prepared to depart, "you know these waters better than anyone. Trust your instincts. If conditions get too dangerous, you pull back. We'll find another way." Frank nodded. He was 41 years old, married with 3 children. He had served with Evelyn for 12 years. They had been through many difficult rescues together. "We'll bring them back, Commander," he said with confidence. The rescue boat launched at 8:15. Through binoculars, Evelyn watched it disappear into the darkness and the storm. Then she returned to the operations room to monitor the radio and coordinate the rescue. For the next 2 hours, Evelyn paced the operations room. The radio provided periodic updates. The rescue boat was making progress, but slowly. The waves were enormous. The wind was relentless. But Frank's voice remained calm and professional with each report. At 10:30, Frank radioed that they were approaching the Northern Star's last known position. "Commander, we have visual contact with the Northern Star. The vessel is listing badly to port. We're moving in to begin rescue operations." "Copy that. Proceed with caution," Evelyn responded. For the next 20 minutes, brief radio transmissions described the rescue operation. The crew was transferring people from the Northern Star to the Coast Guard vessel. It was difficult work in the violent seas. Each person had to be carefully moved from one boat to the other, while both vessels pitched and rolled in the waves. "4 people aboard," Frank reported. 2 more to go." "Copy. Well done," Evelyn said, feeling a surge of relief. They were going to make it. Then everything went wrong. At 11:07, Frank's voice came over the radio, tense for the first time. "Commander, the Northern Star is breaking up. The hull is splitting. We need to—" The transmission cut off. "Frank?" "Morrison, report," Evelyn called into the radio. Nothing but static. "Coast Guard rescue boat, this is Commander Marsh. Report your status immediately." Still nothing. Evelyn's hands gripped the edge of the console. Her mind raced through possibilities. Equipment failure? Damaged radio? Or something worse? "Keep trying to reach them," she ordered the radio operator. "And get me a damage assessment of our backup rescue vessel. We may need to launch another boat." The next 30 minutes were the longest of Evelyn's life. The radio operator called continuously, trying to raise the rescue boat. There was no response. The radar showed the general area where the boats should be, but in the massive waves, it was difficult to get clear readings. Finally, at 11:40, the radio crackled back to life. "Commander, this is Chen." Sarah Chen's voice was strained, almost breaking. "We've had an incident. The Northern Star went down suddenly. Our boat was too close. We were hit by debris. We have damage. We have injuries." Evelyn's blood ran cold. "Chen, report. What is your status? Where is Morrison?" There was a terrible pause. Then, "Morrison went into the water, Commander. He was helping secure the last person from the Northern Star when the vessel broke apart. A piece of the hull hit our boat. Morrison was thrown overboard. We're searching, but—" "Commander, the conditions, we can't see anything. The waves are too high." Evelyn closed her eyes for just a moment. Then she opened them and focused. There would be time for emotions later. Right now, she had people in danger who needed her to think clearly. "Chen, listen to me. You need to secure your own vessel first." "Do you have all the Northern Star's crew?" "5, Commander. We have 5 of them. The captain went down with the ship. He was trying to get his logbook. The cabin flooded before he could get out." "Understood. And your boat? Can you make it back?" "We're taking on some water from the damage, but the pumps are handling it. Johnson is hurt pretty bad. Think his leg is broken. Torres has a head injury. We can make it back, but Commander, Morrison." I know, Evelyn said, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. I know, Sarah. But you need to bring that boat home. You need to get those injured people to safety. We'll send another boat out to search for Morrison as soon as possible. It was the hardest order Evelyn had ever given. Every instinct screamed at her to tell them to keep searching, to find Frank, to not give up. But she also knew that staying out there meant risking more lives. The rescue boat was damaged. People were injured. The storm was still raging. Understood, Commander. Chen's voice was barely a whisper. The damaged rescue boat limped back to station, arriving at 1:30 in the morning. Evelyn was there on the dock as they pulled in. She helped secure the lines. She assisted the paramedics with the injured crew members. And she listened as Sarah Chen, tears streaming down her face, described exactly what had happened. The Northern Star had indeed split in half. In the chaos, with the rescue boat positioned beside the fishing vessel, debris had struck their boat. Frank Morrison, who was on the side of the vessel helping the last person across, was thrown into the water by the impact. They saw him surface once, tried to throw him a line, but another massive wave swept him away. In the darkness and the violent seas, they lost sight of him within seconds. They had searched for over 20 minutes, putting themselves at additional risk, but found nothing. Finally, Sarah made the terrible decision to head back to save the people they had already rescued and to prevent more casualties. Evelyn stood on that dock as the rain poured down, and she listened to every word. She asked questions. She reviewed decisions. And in her professional assessment, she found that Sarah Chen had done everything correctly. She had made the right call to return. Staying longer would likely have resulted in more deaths without any realistic chance of finding Frank Morrison in those conditions. But knowing something intellectually and accepting it emotionally are two different things. As dawn broke on October 16th, the storm finally began to ease. Evelyn launched a full search and rescue operation at first light. Every available boat went out. They searched for 3 days. They found pieces of the Northern Star scattered across miles of ocean. They found some of the vessel's equipment. They found the captain's logbook, ironically, floating in a waterproof container. But they never found Frank Morrison. His body was never recovered. The official investigation concluded that the Coast Guard crew had performed admirably under extremely difficult conditions. 5 lives were saved from the Northern Star. The rescue boat was successfully brought back despite damage. The only criticism was directed at Captain Hensley of the Northern Star for not returning to port sooner when he knew his engine was unreliable. Lieutenant Frank Morrison was posthumously awarded a Medal for Valor. His name was added to the Coast Guard Memorial Wall in Baybridge. His wife and children received full benefits and the gratitude of everyone who knew him. And Commander Evelyn Marsh, who had served with distinction for 35 years, who had saved countless lives, who had done everything by the book that terrible night, could not forgive herself. In the weeks following the incident, Evelyn continued to perform her duties. She attended Frank's memorial service, speaking words of comfort to his family. She completed all the necessary reports and participated in the official investigation. She maintained the Coast Guard station and led her team with the same professionalism she had always shown. But inside, something was broken. Evelyn began to have nightmares. Every night, she would dream of the storm. Sometimes she was on the rescue boat, reaching for Frank's hand as he disappeared into the waves. Sometimes she was Frank himself, struggling in the dark water, calling for help that never came. Sometimes she stood on the dock, frozen, unable to move or speak while people drowned all around her. She would wake up in her quarters, breathing hard, covered in sweat. Then she would lie awake for hours, replaying every decision she had made that night. Should she have gone on the mission herself? Should she have sent a larger crew? Should she have ordered them to abort the rescue earlier, before they got too close to the Northern Star? Her team noticed the change in her. Evelyn became quieter. She second-guessed decisions she would have made instantly before. During routine operations, she would sometimes pause, lost in thought, until someone spoke her name. Sarah Chen came to see her one afternoon, about 6 weeks after the incident. "Commander," Sarah said, standing in Evelyn's office, "I need to say something, and I hope you'll really hear me." Evelyn looked up from her desk. Sarah looked better than she had in the immediate aftermath. The physical cuts and bruises had healed, but her eyes still carried shadows. "Of course, Sarah. Sit down." "I'd rather stand, ma'am." Sarah took a breath. "I've been seeing the counselor, like you ordered. It's helping, but there's something the counselor can't fix, and that's you." Evelyn frowned. "I don't understand." "Commander, we all know you're blaming yourself for what happened to Lieutenant Morrison, and I need you to know that's wrong. You made the right decisions that night. All of them. We were ready. We were prepared. We did our jobs. What happened was a tragic accident. It was the sea, the storm, and bad luck. It wasn't your fault." "Sarah, I appreciate—" "No, ma'am, please let me finish." Sarah's voice was firm but respectful. "I was there. I was the one who gave the order to leave. I was the one who had to make that decision. If anyone should feel guilty, it should be me. But the counselor is helping me understand that I did the right thing. I saved 5 lives. I brought my crew home. Morrison would have wanted that." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. "You did do the right thing, Sarah. You were excellent out there. Then why can't you accept that you did the right thing too?" Sarah's eyes were direct, challenging. "You're our commander. We look up to you. But lately you seem lost, and that scares us, Commander. Because if you don't believe you made the right choices, then how can we trust our own decisions when we're out there?" The words hit Evelyn like a physical blow. She had been so focused on her own guilt that she had not considered how her behavior might affect her team. Evelyn started, then stopped. "You're right. I'm sorry. I'll do better." But even as she said it, Evelyn knew she was lying. She did not know if she could do better. The confidence that had always been her foundation felt shattered. In December, 2 months after the storm, the Coast Guard brass offered Evelyn an early retirement package. They did it delicately, framing it as a recognition of her long service and the trauma she had experienced. They made it clear it was not a requirement, but an option if she wanted it. The message was subtle, but understood. They were worried about her. They thought she needed time away from the job to heal. Evelyn was 53 years old. She had 35 years of service. She qualified for a full pension. She could retire with honor, with medals, with the respect of everyone who knew her. But retirement meant leaving the only life she had known. It meant admitting that Frank Morrison's death had defeated her. It meant giving up. She tried to convince herself she could stay. She told herself she just needed more time. But deep down, Evelyn knew the truth. Every time she sent a crew out on a mission, her heart raced with anxiety. Every time the weather turned bad, she felt panic rising in her chest. She was no longer the calm, confident leader she had been. And in this job, hesitation could cost lives. In January 2001, Commander Evelyn Marsh submitted her resignation. She would retire effective February 1st after 35 years of service to the Coast Guard. The station held a ceremony in her honor. They presented her with a plaque, a flag, and a photo album filled with memories of her career. Her team members, many of them with tears in their eyes, thanked her for her leadership and her years of dedication. They told stories of rescues she had led, of lives she had saved, of the difference she had made. Evelyn stood there in her dress uniform, accepting their kind words, and felt like a fraud. She knew what they did not say, that she was leaving because she was broken, that she was walking away from her duty, that she was abandoning them. On February 1st, Evelyn packed her few belongings from her quarters at the station. She said goodbye to her team. She walked out of the Coast Guard facility for the last time as a member of the service. And then, at 53 years old, Evelyn Marsh had to figure out who she was if she was not Commander Marsh. After leaving the Coast Guard, Evelyn spent several months drifting. She had received a generous retirement package, so money was not an immediate concern. But she had no idea what to do with herself. She stayed in Baybridge for a few weeks, living in a small apartment she had rented years ago but rarely used. But everywhere she went in that town, she saw reminders of her former life. The harbor where she had worked for so many years, the memorial wall with Frank Morrison's name, former colleagues who would stop to say hello, asking her how she was doing with concern in their eyes. Evelyn realized she could not stay there. She needed to go somewhere new, somewhere with no memories, somewhere she could start over. She bought a car and began to drive. She had no destination in mind. She just drove north, following small roads through coastal towns and forest areas. She stayed in cheap motels, ate at roadside diners, and tried not to think about anything. One afternoon in early March, Evelyn's car began making strange noises. She was driving through the mountains, miles from any city. The engine was clearly struggling. She managed to coax the vehicle to keep going until she saw a sign. Cedarwick, population 2,400, next exit. She took the exit and followed a winding road down into a valley. And there, nestled among pine forests with a small river running through it, was the town of Cedarwick. It was beautiful. The main street had old brick buildings, most of them 2 or 3 stories tall. There were small shops with colorful awnings. Trees lined the sidewalks. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still covered with snow. The air smelled fresh and clean. Evelyn found a garage on the edge of town. The mechanic, a friendly man in his 60s named Tom, looked at her car and shook his head. "Going to need a few days to fix this," he said. "The transmission is shot. I'll have to order parts." "Is there a motel in town?" Evelyn asked. "There's the Pineview Inn on Main Street. Molly runs it. Tell her Tom sent you, she'll take good care of you." The Pineview Inn was a charming old building with a wraparound porch. Molly Patterson, the owner, was a woman in her 50s with gray hair and a warm smile. She showed Evelyn to a room on the 2nd floor with windows overlooking the street. "How long will you be staying?" Molly asked. "A few days, I think. My car needs repairs." "Well, you picked a nice time to visit." "Spring is just starting. The valley is gorgeous this time of year. If you need anything, just let me know." Evelyn unpacked her small bag and sat on the bed, looking out the window at the quiet street below. A few people walked by, some stopping to talk with each other. A dog trotted along the sidewalk. Children rode bicycles. Everything moved at a peaceful, unhurried pace. For the first time in months, Evelyn felt something like calm. Over the next few days, while waiting for her car to be fixed, Evelyn explored Cedarwick. She walked along the river. She hiked into the forests. She visited the small library and the community center. She ate breakfast at the Morning Glory Diner and dinner at Giuseppe's Italian restaurant. Everyone she met was friendly. People said hello as she passed them on the street. Shopkeepers smiled and chatted. When she sat alone in the diner, other customers would sometimes start conversations with her. They were curious about the stranger in town, but not intrusive. They asked polite questions, but did not push when Evelyn gave vague answers about where she came from. Evelyn told no one about her past. When people asked what brought her to Cedarwick, She simply said she was traveling and her car had broken down. When they asked what she did for work, she said she was recently retired. She did not specify from what. On her fourth day in Cedarwick, Evelyn took a walk to the edge of town and discovered the campground. It was a large property, maybe 40 acres, with hiking trails, tent sites, and spaces for RVs. There was a small building that served as an office and store, selling basic supplies to campers. A sign on the door said, "Campground for sale. Contact Pine View Realty." Evelyn stood there, looking at the campground, at the forest, at the mountains in the distance. An idea began to form in her mind. A crazy idea. An impossible idea. Or maybe not impossible. She went back to the Pine View Inn and asked Molly about the campground. "Oh, that place has been for sale for almost a year," Molly said. "Old Pete Henderson ran it for 40 years, but he passed away last spring, and his children don't want to keep it. They're trying to sell it, but honestly, nobody around here has the money to buy such a big property." "What's the asking price?" Molly told her a number. Evelyn did some quick mental calculations. With her retirement package and her savings, she could afford it. Barely. But she could do it. "Would you mind if I looked at it more closely?" Evelyn asked. "I can call the real estate agent for you. Her name is Barbara Chen. She'll be happy to show you around." The next day, Barbara met Evelyn at the campground and gave her a full tour. The property was larger than Evelyn had realized. There were 50 camping spots, half of them with electrical hookups for RVs. There were clean bathroom facilities, fire pits, picnic tables, and several miles of marked hiking trails. The office building needed some work, but it was structurally sound. "The location is perfect," Barbara explained as they walked. "We get campers from all over during spring, summer, and fall. People come for the hiking, the fishing in the river, the mountain views. It's peaceful here. Pete did good business for decades." "Why hasn't it sold?" Evelyn asked. "Honestly? The price is fair, but it's a big commitment. Running a campground is a lot of work. You need to be here during the camping season, which is April through October. You need to maintain the facilities, deal with customers, handle reservations. It's not just buying property, it's buying a full-time job. Most people who could afford it don't want that much responsibility." Evelyn looked around the peaceful forest. She thought about her empty life, about the months of drifting, about the need to find something, anything, to give her purpose again. "I'll take it," she said. Barbara blinked in surprise. "Don't you want to think about it? Maybe have an inspector look at the property? Discuss it with family?" "I don't have family," Evelyn said, "and I don't need to think about it. I want to buy the campground." 3 weeks later, after inspections and paperwork and legal processes, Evelyn became the owner of the Cedarwick campground. She moved into Pete Henderson's old RV, a vintage Airstream trailer that sat on a permanent spot near the office. It was small but comfortable, with everything she needed: a bed, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom, and a desk by the window. Evelyn spent that first spring preparing for the camping season. She cleaned the bathroom facilities until they sparkled. She repaired broken picnic tables. She cleared fallen branches from the hiking trails. She repainted the office and organized the supply store. She created a simple website and set up an online reservation system. And slowly, without quite realizing it was happening, Evelyn began to heal. The Cedarwick campground opened for the season on April 15th. Evelyn was nervous that first morning, wondering if anyone would actually come. But by noon, 3 RVs had pulled in, and by evening, she had a dozen sites occupied. Running the campground was simple, but satisfying work. She checked in guests, helped them find their sites, answered questions about the area, and sold supplies from the store. She made sure the facilities were clean and safe. She resolved small issues when they arose. She recommended local restaurants and attractions. She gave advice about hiking trails and fishing spots. It was so different from her years in the Coast Guard. There was no danger, no life or death decisions, no heart-pounding emergencies, just quiet, steady work helping people enjoy the outdoors. And that was exactly what Evelyn needed. She learned the rhythm of the campground. Weekends were busy, especially during summer. Families would arrive on Friday evenings, set up their tents or RVs, and spend 2 or 3 days hiking, fishing, and relaxing around campfires. During the week, it was quieter, with mostly retirees and a few remote workers who could work from anywhere. Evelyn discovered she enjoyed interacting with the campers. She liked hearing their stories, learning where they came from, and why they chose to visit Cedarwick. She helped children learn to identify different birds. She showed couples the best spots to watch the sunset. She recommended trails based on people's fitness levels and interests. And crucially, Evelyn maintained her privacy about her past. When campers asked about her background, she kept her answers vague. "I worked for the government," or "I had a career in maritime services," was as specific as she got. Most people did not push for details. They were more interested in sharing their own stories than in digging into hers. As the months passed, Evelyn became part of the Cedarwick community. She joined the local business association. She donated supplies to the community center. She sponsored a youth hiking club. She attended town meetings and participated in community events. The townspeople welcomed her warmly. They appreciated that she had invested in the campground and brought business to the area. They liked that she was friendly but not pushy, helpful but not interfering. Gradually, people stopped thinking of her as that new woman from out of town and started thinking of her simply as Evelyn, who ran the campground. Evelyn made friends, though not deep ones. She was close with Molly from the inn, who often stopped by for coffee and conversation. She was friendly with Tom, the mechanic, who helped her maintain the campground vehicles. She knew the mayor, the librarian, the diner owner, and the owners of most of the shops on Main Street. But she kept an emotional distance. She was liked and respected, but she did not let anyone get too close. She never spoke about her feelings, her past, or her pain. When conversations turned personal, she would deflect with a smile and a change of subject. People understood that Evelyn valued her privacy, and they respected it. The seasons turned. Summer gave way to fall, with the forests around Cedarwick bursting into brilliant colors of red, orange, and gold. Then came winter, when the campground closed and Evelyn had quiet months to herself. She read books, took long walks in the snow, and did maintenance work on the facilities. Spring returned, and with it came a new camping season. Year after year, the pattern repeated. Evelyn found comfort in the predictability. She knew what to expect. There were no surprises, no emergencies, no tragedies. Just peaceful days following one after another. The nightmares gradually faded. Evelyn still thought about Frank Morrison and the other people she had lost during her Coast Guard career. But the crushing guilt began to ease. She could remember the good times, the successful rescues, the lives saved, without the memories being poisoned by that one terrible night. 5 years passed, then 10, then 15. Evelyn turned 60, then 65. Her hair, which had been brown with just a few gray streaks when she arrived in Cedarwick, turned completely silver. Lines appeared around her eyes and mouth. Her body remained strong from the physical work of running the campground, but she could feel age creeping in. A little less flexibility, a little more stiffness in the morning. She watched as children who had camped with their families grew into teenagers, then young adults. She saw couples return year after year, celebrating anniversaries at the campground. She heard stories of people who had proposed to their partners on the hiking trails, who had scattered family members' ashes in the forest with permission, who considered the Cedarwick campground a special place in their lives. And Evelyn was content. She had found peace, if not happiness. She had found purpose, if not passion. She had created a life that was safe and manageable. She had built walls around her heart, and those walls protected her from ever being hurt the way she had been hurt before. But walls that keep pain out also keep life out. And Evelyn, though she did not realize it, had been merely existing for all these years, not truly living. That was about to change. It was now 2025. Evelyn was 68 years old, and this was her 25th spring in Cedarwick. The town had changed some over the years. A few new shops, better internet service, some young families moving in from the cities. But it remained essentially the same. A small, peaceful mountain town where everybody knew everybody. Evelyn's life had also remained essentially the same. She ran the campground each year from April to October. She participated in community activities. She maintained her friendly but distant relationships with the townspeople. She lived alone in her airstream, content with her books, her routines, and her solitude. On the morning of April 14th, the day before the campground was scheduled to open for the season, Evelyn was in the office doing final preparations. She was checking the supply inventory when Molly from the inn knocked on the door. "Morning, Evelyn," Molly called out cheerfully. "Got a minute?" "Of course. Come in. Would you like some coffee?" "Always." Molly settled into a chair, while Evelyn poured 2 cups from the pot she kept constantly brewing. At 79 years old, Molly had finally turned over day-to-day management of the inn to her daughter, but still remained active in the community. "So," Molly said, accepting the coffee, "I wanted to talk to you about something. The mayor is organizing a community celebration for the 4th of July. Bigger than usual, and they want to honor some of the longtime residents who've made significant contributions to Cedarwick." "That sounds nice," Evelyn said. "Well, you're on the list. You've been here 25 years, running the campground, supporting the community. They want to give you some kind of recognition." Evelyn felt uncomfortable. "Oh, that's not necessary. I'm just doing my job." "You're being modest, which is exactly why they want to honor you." Molly smiled. "But I know you like your privacy. I told them I'd ask how you felt about it before they made any formal plans." "I appreciate that." Evelyn thought for a moment. "Could I just, maybe send a thank you note? I don't really want to stand up in front of everyone." "I'll let them know you prefer to keep it low-key." Molly sipped her coffee, then gave Evelyn a searching look. "You know, Evelyn, I've known you for a quarter century, and you're still a bit of a mystery. We've all accepted that you like your privacy, and that's fine. But sometimes I wonder." "Wonder what? If you're really happy? Or if you're just hiding?" The words, gently spoken, hit closer to the truth than Evelyn wanted to admit. She looked down at her coffee cup. "I'm content, Molly. That's enough." "Is it?" Molly's voice was kind, not challenging. "I don't mean to pry. I just care about you, that's all. We all do. And sometimes I see this sadness in your eyes, like there's a whole part of you that you keep locked away." Evelyn felt her throat tighten. After a moment, she said quietly, "There are some things from my past that I prefer not to talk about. That doesn't mean I'm not grateful for the life I have here." Molly reached across and patted Evelyn's hand. "Fair enough. Just know that if you ever want to talk, I'm here. No judgment, no pushing. Just listening." "Thank you," Evelyn managed. After Molly left, Evelyn sat alone in the office for a long time, staring out the window at the forest. Was Molly right? Was she just hiding? She had convinced herself over the years that she had moved forward, that she had built a new life. But had she really? Or had she simply run away and stayed away? She pushed the thoughts aside. There was work to do. The campground would open tomorrow, and she needed to be ready. That evening, Evelyn was checking the hiking trail markers when she heard voices coming from one of the trails. It was getting late, almost dark, and the campground was not officially open yet. She walked toward the sounds and found 4 people emerging from the trees, a man and woman in their early 30s, and 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl. "Oh, hello," the man said, looking surprised. "We didn't realize anyone was here." "We were just exploring the trails." "The campground opens tomorrow," Evelyn explained, "but you're welcome to look around." "Did you need a place to camp tonight?" "Actually, yes," the woman said. "We're the Hendersons. I'm Rachel. This is my husband, Mike, and these are our kids, Tyler and Emma. We're doing a cross-country road trip in our RV. We saw the sign for the campground and thought it looked perfect, but we didn't realize you were closed." Evelyn smiled. "Well, since you're already here, why don't you go ahead and set up for the night? No charge. Consider it a soft opening." "Really? That's so kind of you." Rachel looked relieved. Evelyn helped them get settled in one of the RV spots, gave them the code for the bathroom facilities, and provided them with firewood. As darkness fell, she could see them sitting around their campfire, talking and laughing together. It was a pleasant sound. Later that night, lying in her Airstream, Evelyn thought about families like the Hendersons. She had hosted thousands of families over the years. She had seen parents teaching their children to fish, to identify constellations, to appreciate nature. She had witnessed small moments of connection and joy, and she had always observed from the outside, never quite part of it. She had told herself this was fine. She had chosen a life of service and solitude. She did not need deep connections or intimate relationships. The campground gave her purpose. The community gave her a place to belong. That was sufficient. But Molly's words echoed in her mind. "Are you really happy? Or are you just hiding?" Evelyn did not have an answer. The campground season started busily. By mid-April, Evelyn had visitors almost every night. Word had spread through camping forums and travel websites about the Cedarwick campground. And it had developed a reputation as a peaceful, well-maintained spot with excellent trails. Evelyn settled into her familiar routine. She was up early each morning, checking the facilities and preparing for the day. She worked through the daylight hours, helping campers, maintaining the grounds, and managing the small store. In the evenings, she would walk the trails, ensuring everything was safe and secure, often stopping to chat with campers around their fires. The Henderson family, who had stayed that first night, ended up staying for 3 days. Before they left, Rachel Henderson stopped by the office. "We just wanted to thank you again," Rachel said. "The kids had an amazing time. Tyler caught his first fish in the river, and Emma hiked her first 5-mile trail. These are the kinds of experiences we wanted them to have on this trip." "I'm glad you enjoyed it," Evelyn said warmly. "You've created something really special here," Rachel continued. "We travel a lot, and we've stayed at dozens of campgrounds. But there's something different about this place. It feels safe, welcoming. And I think that's because of you. You really care about this place and the people who come here." Evelyn felt touched by the kind words. "Thank you. That means a lot." After the Hendersons left, Evelyn found herself thinking about what Rachel had said. Safe. Yes, the campground was safe. That was the point. That was what she had been building for 25 years. A place where nothing bad happened, where people could relax and enjoy nature without worry or danger. But safety had become Evelyn's entire world. She had created a bubble where she controlled everything, where the risks were minimal, where she never had to make difficult decisions or face unexpected crises. She had become so afraid of failing again that she had chosen a life where failure was nearly impossible. As April turned into May, the weather remained beautiful. Warm days, cool nights, clear skies, perfect camping weather. Evelyn's reservation book filled up. She had to turn people away on some weekends because every spot was occupied. One Saturday in early May, a large group arrived, 9 people in 3 vehicles. They were college students from the university downstate, planning a week-long camping trip to celebrate finishing their exams. They were energetic, enthusiastic, and loud, playing music, laughing, and generally having a good time. Evelyn had to remind them twice about quiet hours and once about proper food storage to avoid attracting bears. They apologized each time, but they clearly were not used to camping. They were city kids having an adventure. On their 3rd night, one of the students, a young woman named Ashley, came to Evelyn's trailer. "Hi, Ms. Evelyn?" Ashley looked embarrassed. "I'm really sorry to bother you, but I think I'm lost." Evelyn stepped outside. "Lost?" "We're in the campground." "I know, but I went for a walk on one of the trails this afternoon just by myself. I was taking photos, and I think I went too far, and then when I tried to come back, I took a wrong turn. I walked for like an hour before I finally found the main trail again. It was kind of scary." "Which trail were you on?" "The one with the blue markers?" "The Cedar Ridge Trail," Evelyn said. "That's a loop." "It's actually hard to get lost on it. Are you sure you didn't wander off the marked path?" Ashley looked sheepish. "I might have. I saw this really pretty spot with flowers, and I left the trail to get a better photo angle. And then I wasn't sure which way the trail was." Evelyn suppressed a sigh. This happened every season. People, especially those new to hiking, would leave the marked trails and then become disoriented. "First rule of hiking," Evelyn said gently. "Never leave the marked trail unless you're an experienced navigator. The forest all looks the same after a while. It's easy to get turned around." "I know. I'm sorry. I feel really stupid." "Don't feel stupid. You found your way back, and you learned a lesson. Just please stay on the trails from now on, okay?" "I will. I promise." After Ashley left, Evelyn walked to the trailhead and checked all the trail markers to make sure they were visible and in good condition. They were. But she made a mental note to create some better information sheets about trail safety for her guests. The week passed without further incidents. The college students left on Friday morning, thanking Evelyn for her hospitality and promising to leave positive reviews online. That weekend brought a different kind of visitor, a man traveling alone in a small tent. His name was Robert Chen. He was in his early 40s, quiet and polite. He set up his tent in a somewhat isolated spot and spent most of his time hiking alone. On Sunday morning, Robert stopped by the office. "I was wondering," he said, "are there any unmarked trails in the area?" "I'm an experienced hiker, and I've done all your marked trails. I'm interested in exploring more of the forest." Evelyn hesitated. "There are some old logging roads that go deeper into the national forest, but they're not maintained, and they're not on any maps. I don't recommend them unless you're really experienced and properly equipped." "I am," Robert assured her. "I have GPS, emergency beacon, proper gear. I've hiked all over the country. I just like going where most people don't." "Well, if you go out there, please let me know before you leave and when you get back, just so someone knows where you are." "Of course." Robert went out that afternoon and returned just before dark. He did the same on Monday and Tuesday. Each time he checked in with Evelyn before and after. He seemed responsible and careful. On Wednesday morning, Robert stopped by the office again. "I'm heading out early tomorrow," he said. "I'm going to try to reach the old fire lookout tower. I know it's about a 15-mile hike from here. I'll probably be gone most of the day, but I should be back by dark." "Okay," Evelyn said. "Just be careful. And remember, the weather can change quickly in the mountains." "I've checked the forecast. Should be clear all day." But forecasts, as Evelyn knew from her years in the Coast Guard, were not always accurate. Thursday started as a beautiful day, sunny, warm, with just a light breeze. Robert Chen left the campground at 6 in the morning, waving to Evelyn as he drove past the office. Evelyn spent the day in her usual activities. She helped a family with young children get settled into their spot. She cleaned the bathroom facilities. She restocked the store. She answered questions from campers about the best fishing spots and local restaurants. Around noon, she noticed clouds beginning to form over the mountains. By 2 in the afternoon, the sky was getting dark. By 3, the first drops of rain started falling. Evelyn checked the weather radar on her computer. A storm system had moved in faster than predicted. The forecast now called for heavy rain, possible thunderstorms, and much cooler temperatures. She thought about Robert Chen, somewhere out in the forest, probably miles from the campground. She hoped he had noticed the changing weather and decided to turn back early. By 4 o'clock, the rain was falling steadily. By 5, it was pouring. Thunder rumbled across the valley. Lightning flashed over the mountains. Evelyn went around the campground, making sure all her guests were safe. Most people had retreated to their RVs or tents. A few had left entirely, deciding to find a motel in town rather than camp in the storm. Darkness fell early because of the thick clouds. By 7 o'clock, it was fully dark and Robert Chen had not returned. Evelyn was not worried yet. He might have taken shelter and was waiting for the rain to ease before hiking back. That would be the sensible thing to do. But by 9 o'clock, with the rain still falling and no sign of Robert, Evelyn started to feel uneasy. By 10 o'clock, she was definitely worried. She called Robert's cell phone. No answer. She tried again. Still nothing. At 10:30, she called the sheriff's office. "Sheriff Wilson speaking." "Sheriff, this is Evelyn Marsh from the campground. I have a camper who went hiking this morning and hasn't returned. I'm getting concerned." "How long has he been gone?" "Since 6 this morning. He said he'd be back by dark." "Well, it's only been about 4 hours past dark. He might just be taking shelter from the rain." "I know. But I tried calling his cell phone and got no answer. And the weather got bad suddenly. He might be in trouble." Sheriff David Wilson had been the sheriff of Cedarwick for 15 years. He was a competent, experienced officer, but he was used to dealing with small-town issues, minor thefts, traffic accidents, the occasional drunk and disorderly. Search and rescue operations were not common. "Okay," the sheriff said. "Tell me about this camper. Name, age, description." "And where was he hiking?" Evelyn provided all the information she had. She explained that Robert was experienced and well-equipped, but that he had been going into the unmarked areas of the national forest. "I'll call the State Park Ranger Service," the sheriff said. "They have more experience with search and rescue in the forest. But honestly, Ms. Marsh, we probably can't do much tonight. It's dark, it's raining, and the forest is huge. We'll have to wait until morning." "I understand," Evelyn said, though she hated it. "But please, call them now. Get things organized so we can start searching at first light." "Will do. And Miss Marsh, try not to worry too much. Most likely he found a dry spot and is waiting out the rain. We'll find him in the morning." After hanging up, Evelyn stood in her trailer, listening to the rain pound on the roof. She knew the sheriff was probably right. Robert was likely fine, just delayed. But she also knew, from her years in the Coast Guard, that probably fine was not the same as definitely fine. And in situations like this, assuming everything would work out could be fatal, she thought about going out herself to look for Robert. But that would be foolish. She did not know exactly where he had gone. The forest was massive. In the dark and the rain, she would accomplish nothing except possibly getting lost herself. So she did what she hated most. She waited. The rain continued through the night. Evelyn barely slept. She kept checking her phone, hoping to see a call from Robert or from the sheriff. Neither came. At dawn on Friday morning, Evelyn was up and dressed. The rain had finally stopped, but the sky remained overcast and threatening. She drove into town to the sheriff's office. Sheriff Wilson was already there, along with 2 park rangers, a man named Marcus Rodriguez and a woman named Jennifer Kim. "We're organizing a search party," the sheriff explained. "The rangers will lead it. They know the national forest better than anyone." "I want to come," Evelyn said. The sheriff looked uncertain. "Ms. Marsh, with respect, you're 68 years old. The terrain out there is rough. This is work for younger people." "I'm in good physical condition," Evelyn said firmly. "I hike those trails every day, and I know the area around the campground better than anyone except possibly the rangers." Ranger Rodriguez nodded. "She's right about knowing the local area, and we can use all the help we can get. The forest is big, and we have only a small team." "All right," the sheriff agreed reluctantly, "but you stick with the group. No heroics." The search party assembled at the campground at 7:30. Besides Evelyn, the sheriff, and the 2 rangers, there were 6 volunteers. Tom the mechanic, 2 local hunters who knew the forest, a young volunteer firefighter, and 2 college-age kids home from school for the summer. Ranger Rodriguez explained the search plan. They would start at the campground and work their way toward the old fire lookout tower where Robert had been headed. They would divide into 3 teams, each taking a different route, staying within radio contact. Evelyn was assigned to a team with Ranger Kim and the 2 hunters. They set out northeast, following one of the old logging roads that led deeper into the forest. The terrain was difficult. The rain had turned the unpaved roads into muddy tracks. Water dripped from every tree. The air was cold and damp. They called Robert's name as they walked, listening for any response. But the only sounds were their own voices echoing back and the drip of water from the leaves. Hours passed. They hiked for miles, searching carefully, checking any area where someone might take shelter. They found nothing. At noon, Ranger Rodriguez called on the radio. "All teams converge at coordinates." He gave a location about 2 miles from the fire lookout tower. "We'll reassess and decide next steps." When all 3 teams met up, everyone looked tired and discouraged. They had covered a huge area and found no sign of Robert Chen. "This isn't working," the sheriff said. "The forest is too big. We could search for days and still miss him. We need to think smarter." "The problem," Ranger Kim said, "is that we don't know exactly where he went." The fire lookout tower was his destination, but he could have taken any number of routes to get there. Or he might have changed his mind and gone somewhere else entirely. Evelyn had been quiet during this discussion, but now she spoke up. "He had GPS, right? So he knew where he was going, which means he would have taken the most direct route to the tower." "Not necessarily," one of the hunters said. "An experienced hiker might take a more scenic route, or follow a ridge instead of a valley." "True," Evelyn acknowledged, "but he also knew a storm was coming. Even if he didn't realize it in the morning, he would have seen the clouds building by noon. So at that point, he would want to get to shelter quickly, which means he would take the most direct route." "That makes sense," Ranger Rodriguez said. "But we've already searched the direct route to the tower. He's not on it. Then maybe he never made it to the tower, Evelyn said. Maybe something happened earlier. An injury, or he got disoriented, or he found a different shelter. If only we knew what time he realized the storm was coming, the sheriff mused. That would tell us how far he might have gotten before he started looking for shelter. Evelyn thought for a moment. An idea was forming, something from her old life, from her training and experience in the Coast Guard. Something about weather patterns, timing, and human behavior. What time did the clouds start building? She asked Ranger Kim. The ranger checked her notes. Weather Service says the storm front moved in around 11:30. The clouds would have been visible over the mountains by noon. And how fast does an experienced hiker cover ground in this terrain? Maybe 2 to 3 miles per hour, depending on the difficulty. Evelyn did quick mental calculations. Robert left at 6. If he hiked for 6 hours at, say, 2.5 miles per hour, he would be about 15 miles out when he saw the storm coming. He'd probably hike for another hour or so before deciding to take shelter, putting him 16 to 18 miles from the campground. There's a lot of forest in that radius, the sheriff said. Yes, Evelyn agreed, but we can narrow it down. He was heading to the fire lookout tower, which is northeast of the campground, so he'd be somewhere in a northeastern arc, 16 to 18 miles out. She pulled out a map of the area that Ranger Rodriguez had. She marked the campground and the fire lookout tower. Then she used her finger to trace an arc. Somewhere in here, she said. This is where we should focus our search. Ranger Rodriguez looked at the map, then at Evelyn with new respect. That's actually really smart. You've just cut our search area by more than half. But it's still a lot of ground to cover, Ranger Kim said, and we're losing daylight. We've got maybe 4 or 5 hours before dark. Then we need to split up and search fast, Evelyn said. And we need to think about where, in this area, someone would take shelter. Not just any shelter, but the best shelter. Caves, overhangs, dense groves of trees. There's an old hunting cabin, one of the local hunters said. My granddad built it 40 years ago. It's not on any maps, but it's in that area. He pointed to a spot on the map within Evelyn's search arc. If someone was looking for shelter, they might find it. Let's check it out, the sheriff said. The group set off with renewed energy. Evelyn felt something she had not felt in years, a sense of purpose, of using skills she had once taken for granted. She was analyzing situations, making strategic decisions, leading a team toward a goal. It felt both strange and familiar, like putting on an old uniform that still somehow fit. They hiked for 2 hours before reaching the area where the cabin was supposed to be. But finding the exact location proved difficult. The forest looked the same in every direction. I think it's north of here, the hunter said, looking uncertain. Or maybe west. It's been years since I've been out here. Evelyn looked at the forest around them. She looked at the map. And then she did something she had not done in 25 years. She trusted her instincts. We need to go higher, she said. If you're caught in a storm, you want high ground if possible. Better drainage, better visibility come morning. The cabin would be on a rise, not in a valley. She's right, Ranger Rodriguez said. Let's head up slope. 20 minutes later, they found it. An old log cabin, barely visible among the trees. The roof was partially collapsed, but the main structure still stood. Robert, the sheriff called. Robert Chen, are you here? For a moment, there was only silence. Then, faintly, they heard a voice from inside the cabin. I'm here! I'm here! They rushed to the cabin. The door was jammed, but Tom and one of the hunters managed to force it open. Inside, they found Robert Chen lying on the floor, his left leg clearly injured, wrapped in what looked like strips torn from his shirt. Thank God, Robert said, his voice weak but relieved. I wasn't sure anyone would find me. Ranger Kim immediately knelt beside him, checking his condition. What happened? How badly are you hurt? I was about 4 hours into my hike when I saw the storm coming, Robert explained, wincing as the ranger examined his leg. I started heading back, but I was going fast, not being as careful as I should have been. I slipped on some loose rocks, twisted my ankle badly. Might be broken, I don't know. Can you put any weight on it? Ranger Rodriguez asked. I tried. I managed to hobble to this cabin, but that took me almost 2 hours. After that, I couldn't go any further. The pain was too much. Why didn't you call for help? The sheriff asked. Robert pulled a damaged cell phone from his pocket. Dropped it when I fell. The screen is shattered, and it won't turn on. I have my emergency beacon, but... He looked embarrassed. I left it in my tent. I thought I was just going for a day hike. Stupid mistake. We all make mistakes, Evelyn said gently. The important thing is you found shelter and stayed put. That was the right decision. I remembered what you told me at the campground, about staying safe, being prepared. I had food, water, and my first aid kit. I figured someone would realize I was missing and start looking. I just had to wait. Ranger Kim carefully probed Robert's ankle. He gasped in pain. We need to get him to a hospital, she said. This needs x-rays and proper treatment. But moving him is going to be difficult. We're at least a 2-hour hike from where we parked the vehicles, and the terrain is rough. I can walk, Robert said, trying to sound confident. If someone helps me, maybe, Ranger Rodriguez said doubtfully. But it's going to be slow and painful. And it's already getting late. We might not make it out before dark. The sheriff pulled out his radio. Let me see if we can get a helicopter from the state emergency services. But after several attempts to reach anyone on the radio, the sheriff shook his head. No signal. We're too deep in the forest. The trees are blocking the transmission. Then we improvise, Evelyn said. She looked around the cabin, her mind working. Years of Coast Guard training were kicking in, protocols she had not used in decades suddenly clear in her mind. We need a litter, a makeshift stretcher. We can use branches and rope to make one. 4 people can carry him. We'll move in shifts. It'll be slow, but we can do it. That's a good plan, Ranger Kim agreed. But, Evelyn continued, we should send 2 people ahead quickly. They can get to the vehicles, drive to where there's cell reception, and call for an ambulance to meet us. That way, as soon as we get out of the forest, we can transfer him to professionals. Smart, the sheriff said. He looked at the 2 young college-age volunteers. You 2 are fast and fit. Can you do it? Yes, sir, they both said. Evelyn pulled out the map and showed them the route. Follow this path here. It's longer, but easier terrain. You should be able to jog most of it. When you get to the vehicles, drive until you have cell service, then call an ambulance. Tell them to meet us at the campground parking lot. That's the closest access point. The 2 young people set off immediately, moving quickly through the trees. Meanwhile, the rest of the group worked on building the litter. They found strong branches and used rope from their packs to lash them together. They padded it with their jackets to make it more comfortable. As they worked, Robert watched Evelyn with curiosity. You've done this before, he said. I can tell. You're not just a campground operator, are you? Evelyn paused in her work. The others in the group also looked at her, suddenly aware that she had been orchestrating this entire rescue with professional expertise. I used to work in search and rescue, Evelyn said carefully. A long time ago. You're really good at it, Robert said. Thank you. For organizing this, for thinking of everything. I think you might have saved my life. Evelyn felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride, because she had successfully used her old skills. Sadness, because it reminded her of everything she had lost. And something else. Something she could not quite name. Maybe it was the realization that she had not lost those skills after all. They had been dormant, buried under years of routine and avoidance, but they were still there. "Let's get you out of here," she said, avoiding the gratitude in his eyes. They carefully lifted Robert onto the litter. He tried to suppress his groans of pain, but it was clear that moving his injured leg was agonizing. Tom, the sheriff, and the 2 hunters took the first shift carrying him. Evelyn and the rangers walked alongside, ready to take over when the carriers needed rest. The journey back was slow and difficult. The litter was heavy, and the forest floor was uneven. They had to carefully navigate around trees, over roots, and across small streams. Every 15 minutes, they stopped to change carriers, giving the exhausted people a chance to rest. As they hiked, darkness began to fall. They turned on flashlights, adding an eerie quality to the already challenging journey. The beams of light cut through the darkness, illuminating patches of forest while leaving everything else in shadow. Evelyn found herself thinking about that night 25 years ago, the night of the storm, the night Frank Morrison had died. That rescue had been in darkness too, in chaos and danger and fear. But that had been different. That had been the ocean, unpredictable and wild. This was the forest, difficult but manageable. And this time, they had found the person they were looking for. This time, everyone was coming home. After 3 hours of hiking, they finally saw the lights of the campground in the distance. The 2 young volunteers had done their job well. An ambulance was waiting in the parking lot, its lights flashing. Paramedics rushed forward with a professional stretcher, transferring Robert from the makeshift litter. "Good work, everyone," Sheriff Wilson said as they watched the ambulance drive away. "Really good work." The search party dispersed. People shook hands, clapped each other on the back, relieved that it had ended well. Tom gave Evelyn a tired smile. "You were amazing out there, Evelyn. Where'd you learn all that stuff?" "Just some old training," Evelyn said vaguely. "I'm glad we found him." Ranger Rodriguez approached her before he left. "Ms. Marsh, I don't know what your background is, but you clearly have significant experience in search and rescue operations. The way you analyzed the situation, narrowed down the search area, organized the team, that was textbook professional technique." "Thank you," Evelyn said. "If you ever want to volunteer with the Park Service as a consultant or advisor, we'd be happy to have you. We don't get many search and rescue situations, but when we do, it would be valuable to have someone with your expertise." Evelyn was about to automatically decline, as she had declined every invitation over the years that might pull her back into that world. But then she hesitated. Today had felt good. Using her skills, helping someone in need, being part of a team working toward a common goal, it had awakened something in her she thought was dead. "Let me think about it," she heard herself say. News of the successful rescue spread quickly through Cedarwick. By Saturday morning, everyone in town was talking about it. The story was simple and compelling. A hiker had gotten lost and injured in the forest, and a search party led by Evelyn Marsh from the campground had found him just in time. But as people talked, questions arose. How had Evelyn known where to search? How had she organized the rescue so efficiently? Where had she learned those skills? Evelyn spent Saturday morning trying to return to her normal routine. She helped new campers check in. She restocked supplies. She tried to act as if nothing had changed. But people looked at her differently now. There was curiosity in their eyes, respect, and something else. A recognition that there was more to quiet Evelyn Marsh than they had realized. At noon, Molly appeared at the office with sandwiches and coffee. thought you might need lunch," Molly said. "And I thought you might need a friend." They sat on the porch of the office building, eating in comfortable silence for a few minutes. "So," Molly finally said, "that was quite something yesterday. The whole town is amazed." "We just did what needed to be done," Evelyn said. "Evelyn." Molly's voice was gentle but firm. "You can keep deflecting if you want. But I've known you for 25 years, and yesterday I saw a different person. Someone confident, professional, clearly highly trained. Someone who knew exactly what she was doing in that crisis." Evelyn looked out at the forest. She could continue hiding, continue keeping her past locked away, or she could trust someone, maybe for the first time since she had arrived in Cedarwick. "I was in the Coast Guard," Evelyn said quietly. "For 35 years, I retired as a commander." Molly's eyes widened. "The Coast Guard? Evelyn, that's impressive. Why didn't you ever tell anyone?" "Because I left under difficult circumstances. Because I couldn't do the job anymore. Because I failed someone when it mattered most, and people died." The words came out in a rush, surprising Evelyn with their intensity. She had not talked about this in 25 years, had not allowed herself to even think about it in depth. But now, sitting with Molly, it all came pouring out. She told Molly about her career, about Commander Evelyn Marsh, who had been respected throughout the Coast Guard. She told her about the storm, about the Northern Star, about Frank Morrison disappearing into the dark water. She told her about the guilt, the nightmares, the crushing sense that she had failed. "So I left," Evelyn finished. "I came here and tried to forget that part of my life ever existed. I just wanted peace. I didn't want to ever be responsible for someone's life again." Molly was quiet for a long moment, processing everything she had heard. "Oh, Evelyn," she finally said, "you've been carrying this alone for all these years?" "It was my burden to carry." "No," Molly said firmly, "that's not how it works. We all need people, especially when we're hurting. You should have told someone. You should have let people help you." "I didn't know how," Evelyn admitted, "and after a while, it seemed too late. How do you suddenly tell people about a past you've been hiding for decades?" "You just did," Molly pointed out gently, "and I don't think any less of you. If anything, I think more of you. You had a difficult, important career. You saved many lives. You suffered a terrible trauma. And then you came here and built a new life, even though you were hurting. That takes strength, Evelyn." "I ran away," Evelyn said. "I was a coward." "You survived," Molly corrected. "There's a difference. And yesterday, you proved that you're not a coward. You could have stayed back, let the Rangers handle everything. But you didn't. You went out there, and you used your skills to save someone's life. Just like you did for all those years in the Coast Guard." Evelyn felt tears building in her eyes. "But I couldn't save Frank. I sent him out there, and he died." "Did you make bad decisions that night?" Molly asked. "No," Evelyn admitted. "I've gone over it 1,000 times. Every decision was correct according to protocols and experience. Then his death was a tragedy, not a failure. The ocean is dangerous. Storms are unpredictable. Sometimes terrible things happen despite our best efforts. That doesn't mean you failed. It means you're human, dealing with forces beyond anyone's control. But I was in command. I was responsible." "Being in command doesn't make you God," Molly said. "You can make all the right decisions and still have things go wrong. That's the burden of leadership, yes. But it's not the same as failure." These were things Evelyn had heard before, from the Coast Guard counselors, from the investigation board, from her colleagues. But hearing them from Molly, her friend, in this place where she had built her new life, They somehow hit differently. Yesterday, Molly continued, you showed everyone in Cedarwick what you're capable of. You're a leader, Evelyn. You're skilled and knowledgeable and brave. And I think it's time you stopped hiding those things. I don't know if I can, Evelyn said honestly. I don't know if I'm ready to be that person again. You don't have to be Commander Marsh, Molly said. You can just be Evelyn. But maybe Evelyn who doesn't hide her past. Evelyn who uses her skills when they're needed. Evelyn who lets people in. They sat in silence for a while longer, watching campers come and go, children playing, families enjoying the peaceful campground. Finally, Evelyn said, Robert Chen, the hiker we rescued. He's at the hospital in the next county. His ankle was badly sprained but not broken. They're going to release him tomorrow. He has no family nearby, and his car is here at the campground. I was thinking of driving over to pick him up, bring him back here so he can rest a few days before driving home. That's kind of you, Molly said. Will you come with me? Evelyn asked. I think I'd like someone with me. If you're not busy. Molly smiled warmly. I'd be happy to. On Sunday afternoon, Evelyn and Molly drove to the county hospital. Robert was waiting in a wheelchair, his ankle in a walking boot, crutches leaning against his chair. Ms. Marsh, he said, his face lighting up when he saw her. You didn't have to come all this way. I wanted to make sure you were all right, Evelyn said, and to offer you a free stay at the campground while you recover. It's the least I can do. That's incredibly generous. Thank you. On the drive back to Cedarwick, Robert asked questions about the rescue, about how they had found him, about Evelyn's background. This time, with Molly sitting beside her offering silent support, Evelyn found herself answering more openly than she usually would. I was in the Coast Guard, she explained. I specialized in search and rescue operations. So when you didn't come back, I guess old training kicked in. You must have saved a lot of people in your career, Robert said. I did, Evelyn acknowledged. But I also lost some. She did not elaborate, and Robert sensed this was not a topic to push. Instead, he said, Well, I'm grateful you were there. And I learned a valuable lesson about taking proper safety equipment on every hike, no matter how routine I think it will be. Back at the campground, Evelyn set Robert up in one of the rental cabins she normally reserved for campers who did not have their own equipment. She brought him food, made sure he was comfortable, and told him to let her know if he needed anything. Over the next few days, Robert stayed at the campground, mostly resting but occasionally hobbling around on his crutches. He seemed content to sit outside the cabin, reading books and watching the forest. Several times, Evelyn found herself stopping to chat with him. Robert was a software developer who worked remotely. He had been traveling around the country for the past year, working from different places, exploring new areas. He had always loved the outdoors and had become increasingly interested in hiking and backpacking. This was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime, he said with a rueful laugh, seeing all the national parks, the forests, the mountains. And I managed to injure myself just a few months in. Injuries happen, Evelyn said. The important thing is you'll recover, and you learned from it. I did. I'll be more careful in the future. He paused. Can I ask you something personal? Evelyn tensed. You can ask. I might not answer. Do you miss it? The Coast Guard? The rescue work? It was a question Evelyn had been asking herself since Friday's rescue. She thought carefully before answering. Parts of it, she said. I miss the sense of purpose, the feeling that what I was doing really mattered. I miss working with a skilled team. I miss the challenge of solving complex problems. But I also remember the stress, the danger, the weight of responsibility. And I remember what it feels like when things go wrong, when you lose someone despite your best efforts. Is that why you left? Evelyn hesitated, then decided to trust him with at least part of the story. We lost someone on a rescue mission, someone I had served with for years, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I should have done something different, made some other choice that would have saved him. Did the investigation find you at fault? No, they said I did everything right. But you don't believe that? I believe the investigation, Evelyn said slowly. Intellectually, I know I made the correct decisions, but emotionally, it's harder. I was the commander. I sent him out there. He didn't come back. That will always be true, no matter how many people tell me it wasn't my fault. Robert nodded, understanding. I had a friend who died in a car accident a few years ago. I was supposed to meet him for dinner that night. I canceled at the last minute because I was tired from work. He went alone, and on the way home, a drunk driver hit him. I know logically that it wasn't my fault. But I sometimes wonder if he would have left the restaurant at a different time if I had been there, if maybe he would have avoided that intersection at the exact wrong moment. I'm sorry, Evelyn said. Thank you. My point is, I think we all carry things like this. Moments where we wish we could have changed something, even when we know rationally that we couldn't have known what would happen. It's part of being human, I guess. We want to believe we have more control over outcomes than we really do. It was a perceptive observation, and it made Evelyn think. She had spent 25 years believing she should have been able to control the outcome of that rescue, should have been able to save Frank Morrison. But she could not control the storm, the waves, the random piece of debris that hit their boat. She had made the best decisions she could with the information available. The rest had been beyond her control. That's very wise, Evelyn said. Just something my therapist helped me understand. I should probably be sharing their wisdom, not taking credit for it. They both laughed, and Evelyn realized she was enjoying this conversation, this connection with another person who understood loss and complexity. Over Robert's remaining days at the campground, he and Evelyn talked often. They discussed hiking, nature, books, and life philosophies. Robert told stories of his travels and the interesting people he had met. Evelyn found herself sharing more about her Coast Guard career, the successful rescues, the close calls, the camaraderie of the service. When Robert finally left on Wednesday, his ankle healing well, he shook Evelyn's hand warmly. Thank you, he said, not just for the rescue, but for the conversations. I needed this break, this time to think and heal, more than I realized. I think I needed it too, Evelyn admitted. You should consider sharing your stories more widely, Robert suggested. You have incredible experience. You could mentor young people interested in search and rescue, or volunteer with organizations that need your expertise. You have too much knowledge and skill to keep it all to yourself. After he drove away, Evelyn stood in the parking lot, thinking about his words. She thought about Ranger Rodriguez's offer to volunteer with the Park Service. She thought about Molly's observation that she had been hiding for too long. And she thought about how good it had felt to use her skills again, to help someone, to be part of something larger than herself. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. In the days following Robert's departure, Evelyn began to make changes in her life. Small changes at first, but significant ones. She called Ranger Rodriguez and told him she was interested in volunteering as a consultant for search and rescue operations. They met at the ranger station, and she offered to help develop better protocols for lost hiker situations, drawing on her decades of experience. This is excellent, Ranger Rodriguez said, looking over the documentation Evelyn had prepared. Professional, thorough, and practical. Can I share this with the regional office? They're always looking for ways to improve our search and rescue procedures. Of course, Evelyn said. She also began talking more openly with people in Cedarwick about her past, not pushing it on everyone, but no longer deflecting when questions came up. When campers asked about her background, she mentioned the Coast Guard. When people in town expressed admiration for her role in Robert's rescue, she acknowledged it instead of minimizing it. The response was overwhelmingly positive. People were interested, impressed, and supportive. Nobody judged her for leaving her career. Nobody questioned why she had come to Cedarwick. They simply accepted this new information about someone they had known for years and thought no less of her for it. In fact, they respected her more. Molly had been right. The fear of sharing her past had been worse than the reality. One Saturday in late May, Evelyn was working in the office when Sheriff Wilson stopped by. "Evelyn, got a minute?" "Of course. Come in." The sheriff sat down, looking somewhat uncomfortable. "I wanted to talk to you about something. We're organizing a community emergency response team. Nothing big, just local volunteers who would be trained to help in situations like lost hikers, natural disasters, medical emergencies, things that might happen before professional help can arrive." "That sounds like a good idea," Evelyn said. "Well, I was hoping you might be willing to help lead the training. You have more experience in emergency response than anyone in this county. We could really use your expertise." Evelyn felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. Leading training meant being responsible for teaching people, for ensuring they learned correctly, for being seen as an authority. All things she had avoided for 25 years. But she also felt something else: interest. The chance to share what she knew, to help prepare the community for emergencies, to make a real difference. "Can I think about it?" she asked. "Of course. No pressure, but I hope you'll say yes." After the sheriff left, Evelyn sat alone in the office, considering. This was a bigger step than volunteering with the Park Service. This would make her a visible leader in the community again. It would mean accepting responsibility for others' safety and preparedness. It would mean stepping out of the shadows she had hidden in for so long. She thought about Frank Morrison. She thought about all the people she had saved during her Coast Guard career. She thought about Robert Chen, injured in the forest, and how her skills had helped bring him home safely. And she realized that hiding her skills, refusing to use them, refusing to help people because she was afraid of failing, that was its own form of failure. Frank's death had been a tragedy, but it would be compounded if she let it stop her from ever helping anyone again. That evening, Evelyn called the sheriff. "I'll do it. I'll help with the training." She could hear the smile in his voice. "That's wonderful. Thank you, Evelyn." The emergency response training began in early June. 20 volunteers from Cedarwick and surrounding areas signed up. They met twice a week in the community center, where Evelyn taught them about search and rescue techniques, first aid, crisis management, and communication protocols. Evelyn was nervous at first, standing in front of the group, all eyes on her. But as she began teaching, something clicked into place. This was what she had done for years in the Coast Guard: training new recruits, leading exercises, passing on knowledge. The skills came back naturally, along with the confidence. The volunteers were enthusiastic and attentive. They asked good questions. They practiced the techniques she taught. They thanked her after each session. "You're a natural teacher," one of the volunteers, a young woman named Lisa, told her. "Everything makes sense when you explain it. You make it seem manageable, not scary." "That's the key," Evelyn said. "Emergency situations are stressful, but if you have good training and clear procedures, you can handle them. You just have to trust your training and stay calm." As the summer progressed, Evelyn found herself increasingly integrated into the community in ways she had never been before. She was no longer just the friendly but private campground operator. She was now Evelyn Marsh, retired Coast Guard commander, search and rescue expert, community trainer, and friend to many. People sought her advice on various matters. The volunteer fire department asked her to review their emergency procedures. The school principal asked if she would talk to students about careers in public service. The hiking club invited her to lead a workshop on wilderness safety. Evelyn said yes to more things than she would have believed possible just months earlier. And with each yes, she felt a little lighter, a little more connected, a little more alive. But the biggest change was internal. The nightmares about the storm had finally stopped. Evelyn could think about Frank Morrison now without the crushing guilt. She missed him, mourned him, wished things had been different. But she had accepted that his death was not her failure. It was a tragedy that happened despite everyone's best efforts, including hers. She had been a good commander. She had made the right decisions that night. And Frank would not have wanted her to spend the rest of her life punishing herself for something she could not have prevented. One evening in early July, Evelyn sat on the porch of her Airstream, watching the sun set over the mountains. The campground was full, families and couples enjoying the summer weather. Children laughed and played. Someone strummed a guitar by one of the campfires. The smell of cooking food drifted through the air. Molly came walking up the path, carrying 2 glasses of lemonade. "Thought you might like some company," Molly said, settling into the other chair. "Always," Evelyn said. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, sipping their drinks and enjoying the peaceful evening. "You seem different lately," Molly observed. "Happier." "I feel different," Evelyn admitted. "More like myself than I have in years. Maybe more like myself than I ever have been." "How so?" Evelyn thought about how to put it into words. "When I was in the Coast Guard, I was Commander Marsh. That was my identity. When I lost that, I didn't know who I was. So I tried to become someone else entirely. Just quiet Evelyn who ran a campground. But neither of those was really me. Commander Marsh was one part of me, and Campground Evelyn was another part, but neither was the complete person. And now I'm trying to be the whole person. The one who has skills and experience and can help people, but who also loves the quiet of the forest and values simple, peaceful work. The one who can lead and teach when needed, but who also knows the value of stepping back. I don't have to be just one thing. I can be all of it." Molly smiled. "That's very wise, and I'm glad you figured it out. Though I have to say, I always suspected there was more to you than you let on. You had that quality, like someone who had seen a lot and learned from it. You never pushed, though. All these years, you never demanded I tell you my story, because I trusted that when you were ready, you would. And you did, in your own time. That's what real friendship is. Being there without conditions, waiting until someone is ready to open up." "Thank you," Evelyn said, "for being that kind of friend, for being patient with me." "Always," Molly said. As the sun sank below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple, Evelyn felt a deep sense of contentment. She had not forgotten her past, but she had finally made peace with it. She had not abandoned her skills, but she had found new ways to use them that felt right for this stage of her life. She was 68 years old. She had lived through triumph and tragedy, success and loss, pride and shame. And somehow, after everything, she had found herself in this small mountain town, surrounded by good people, doing work that mattered, finally at peace with who she was. It had taken 25 years and a crisis to get here. But she had arrived. Late October brought the first real cold snap of the year. The leaves had turned brilliant colors and were now falling, carpeting the forest floor in orange, red, and gold. The camping season was winding down. Most of Evelyn's sites were empty during the week, with just a few hardy campers who did not mind the colder weather. On a Tuesday morning, Evelyn was closing up one of the bathroom facilities for the winter when her phone rang. It was Ranger Rodriguez. "Evelyn, we have a situation. A group of college students went hiking yesterday and were supposed to return to their campus last night. They never showed up, and the school is concerned. We think they might be somewhere in the national forest, possibly in your area." Evelyn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the weather. "How many students?" 5. 4 women and 1 man, all around 20 years old. They're part of an outdoor club from the state university. According to their friends, they planned a 2-day hiking trip. Out Monday, back Monday evening. But nobody has heard from them. Do we know which trails they were using? That's the problem. They filed a general recreation permit for the national forest, but did not specify their exact route. We're checking with their club advisor now to see if we can narrow it down. What's the weather forecast? There was a pause. That's the other issue. There's a major storm system moving in, expected to hit tomorrow afternoon. Heavy rain, possibly snow at higher elevations, high winds, if they're still out there. We need to find them fast, Evelyn finished. Exactly. Can you help? You know this area better than almost anyone, and you've proven you're excellent at this kind of operation. Evelyn did not hesitate. Absolutely. When do we start? Meeting at the ranger station in 1 hour. Can you make it? I'll be there. Evelyn quickly locked up the campground office and put a sign on the door explaining she would be away on an emergency. Then she gathered her hiking gear, always kept ready, and drove to the ranger station. When she arrived, she found a larger group than she expected. Besides Rangers Rodriguez and Kim, there were Sheriff Wilson, several deputies, Park Service officials from the regional office, and about a dozen volunteers from the emergency response team Evelyn had trained. "Thank you all for coming so quickly," Ranger Rodriguez began. "Here's what we know." He displayed a map of the national forest on a large screen. 5 college students, experienced hikers according to their club advisor, planned a 2-day trip somewhere in this area. They had proper equipment, including tents, food, and emergency supplies. They were expected to return yesterday evening, but never did. Their cell phones are either turned off or out of range. We can't get any signal. "The storm," someone asked. "How bad?" "Very bad," a woman from the weather service said. "This is a major system. Sustained winds up to 50 miles per hour, heavy precipitation, temperatures dropping into the low 30s at lower elevations, 20s at higher elevations. The rain will likely turn to snow above 4,000 feet. Evelyn studied the map, her mind already working through possibilities. If they planned a 2-day trip, they probably chose a loop trail. Something scenic, but not too technical. Do we have a list of their skill levels? Ranger Kim consulted her notes. The club advisor says they're all intermediate hikers. They've done several trips together in the past year. They would not have chosen anything extremely difficult. That narrows it down, Evelyn said. She traced her finger along several trails on the map. These 3 loops are the most popular for intermediate hikers doing 2-day trips: the Ridge Trail Loop, the Valley Vista Loop, and the Cedar Mountain Loop. That's still a lot of territory, Sheriff Wilson said. True, but we can narrow it further based on timing. Evelyn did quick calculations. 2 days means they plan to hike out about 15 to 20 miles, camp overnight, then return. The Ridge Trail is only 12 miles total, so probably not that one. Valley Vista is 18 miles. Cedar Mountain is 22 miles. I'd focus on those 2. Good thinking, Ranger Rodriguez said. We'll split into 2 main teams, one for each trail. We'll also have a command post here coordinating communications and ready to redirect teams if needed. What about the storm? Someone asked. Should we wait until it passes? Absolutely not, Evelyn said firmly. Everyone looked at her. If those students are out there when the storm hits, they'll be in serious danger. Hypothermia, disorientation, potential injury from falling trees or branches. We need to find them before the storm, not after. Evelyn's right, Ranger Rodriguez agreed. We have maybe 24 hours before conditions become too dangerous. We need to move now. The teams were organized quickly. Evelyn was assigned to lead one of the search teams for the Valley Vista Loop. Her team included Rangers Kim and 4 volunteers from her emergency response training: Lisa, Tom the mechanic, and 2 young men named David and Carlos. Before they headed out, Evelyn gathered her team. Listen carefully, she said. This is a serious situation. We have a narrow window to find these students before a major storm hits. I need you all to stay focused, follow procedures, and communicate constantly. If anyone starts feeling exhausted or unsafe, you speak up immediately. Clear? Everyone nodded. Good. Let's go. The team hiked rapidly along the Valley Vista Trail. The morning was cold and cloudy, with wind gusting through the trees. Evelyn set a challenging pace, knowing they needed to cover ground quickly, but she also made sure to stop periodically to check that everyone was keeping up. They called out the students' names as they walked, listening for any response. They checked obvious camping spots and areas where someone might take shelter. They looked for any signs of recent activity: trampled grass, disturbed leaves, candy wrappers, anything that might indicate people had passed through. Hours passed. They reached the halfway point of the loop without finding any trace of the students. Maybe they're on the other trail, Lisa suggested. Maybe, Evelyn agreed. But we need to finish checking this one before we redirect. Let's keep going. As afternoon approached, the weather began to deteriorate. The wind picked up, the temperature dropped, and in the distance, Evelyn could see dark clouds building. Radio check, Evelyn called into her handheld radio. Team 1 to command, come in. Command here, Ranger Rodriguez responded. What's your status? We're at mile marker 9 on Valley Vista Loop. No sign of the students yet. Weather is deteriorating. How's Team 2? Team 2 is at mile marker 6 on Cedar Mountain Loop. Also no contact yet. Weather Service says the storm will hit in approximately 3 hours. 3 hours. That would put them right at dusk, when searching would become much harder. Copy that, Evelyn said. We'll continue the search. We'll update in 1 hour. They pressed on. The trail became steeper as it climbed toward a ridge. Evelyn's legs burned with the effort, but she ignored the discomfort. 68 years old or not, she could still hike when she needed to. At the top of the ridge, they stopped to catch their breath. From this vantage point, they could see for miles: forests, valleys, and distant mountains. Evelyn scanned the landscape with binoculars, looking for any sign of tents or people. There, Carlos pointed suddenly, down in that valley near the stream. Is that something orange? Evelyn adjusted her binoculars. Yes, there was definitely something bright orange among the trees. Tents were often orange or bright colors to be visible. Good eye, Carlos. Let's check it out. They descended from the ridge, moving carefully on the steep, rocky trail. It took 20 minutes to reach the valley floor. As they approached the stream, they could see more clearly. 2 orange tents set up in a small clearing. Hello, Evelyn called. Anyone here? For a moment, silence. Then a figure emerged from one of the tents, a young woman, maybe 20 years old, looking surprised and relieved. Oh, thank God, she exclaimed. We were starting to worry. Are you part of the university hiking group? Ranger Kim asked. Yes. I'm Sarah. There are 5 of us. She gestured to the tents. Are we in trouble? We were planning to head back today, but we slept in, and then we decided to stay another night because the weather looked okay when we woke up this morning. You're not in trouble, Evelyn said gently, but there's a major storm coming. Your school reported you missing when you didn't return last night. We need to get you out of here as soon as possible. The other 4 students emerged from the tents, 3 young women and 1 young man. They looked healthy and well-equipped, but also somewhat embarrassed at causing alarm. "We're really sorry," one of them said. "We should have let someone know we changed our plans." "Yes, you should have," Ranger Kim said. "But the important thing now is getting you to safety. How fast can you pack up your camp?" 20 minutes, the young man estimated. "Make it 15, Evelyn said, looking at the darkening sky. "That storm is coming faster than we expected." The students scrambled to pack their gear. Evelyn radioed the command post. "Team 1 to command. We found them. All 5 students, safe and healthy. We're at coordinates." She read off their GPS location. "We're packing up now and will start hiking out immediately." "Excellent work, Team 1. Ranger Rodriguez sounded immensely relieved. "Be advised, weather service has updated. Storm expected to hit in 2 hours now, not 3. And it's intensified. Wind gusts up to 60 miles per hour, heavy rain turning to snow at your elevation." "Copy that. We'll move as fast as we can." Within 20 minutes, they were hiking out. The 5 students integrated into the group. Evelyn kept them moving at a quick pace, occasionally having to encourage one of the younger students who was slowing down. They had made it about 2 miles when the storm hit. The transition from calm to chaos was shockingly sudden. 1 minute they were hiking under gray skies with gusty wind. The next minute, it was as if someone had opened a faucet in the heavens. Rain poured down in sheets, soaking everyone instantly. The wind howled through the trees, bending them alarmingly. Thunder crashed overhead, so loud it hurt the ears. "Keep moving!" Evelyn shouted to be heard over the storm. "Don't stop!" They pushed forward, but the conditions made hiking treacherous. The trail became slick with mud. Visibility dropped to just a few yards. The cold rain sapped body heat rapidly. After another mile, Evelyn made a decision. They could not make it back to the trailhead in these conditions. They needed shelter, and they needed it now. "Everyone stop!" she called. "We need to set up the tents." "Right here, right now." "Are you sure?" one of the students asked. "The parking lot isn't that far." "It's at least 5 more miles," Evelyn said. "In these conditions, that's at least 3 or 4 hours. We don't have that much time before hypothermia becomes a serious risk. We shelter here, wait out the worst of the storm, then continue when conditions improve." She radioed the command post to explain the situation. Ranger Rodriguez agreed with her decision. "Safety first," he said. "Keep everyone warm and dry. Let us know if anyone's condition deteriorates." The team worked together to set up tents in the rain. It was difficult, miserable work. The wind kept trying to tear the tent fabric from their hands. The ground was so wet that stakes did not hold well. But eventually they got 4 tents erected and secured. Evelyn divided everyone into the tents, making sure each tent had experienced and inexperienced people mixed together. She took responsibility for 2 of the students, both young women who were clearly frightened by the situation. Inside the tent, they stripped off their wet outer layers and got into dry clothes from their packs. Evelyn had everyone get into their sleeping bags for warmth. "How long will the storm last?" one of the students, named Emma, asked nervously. "Hard to say," Evelyn replied honestly. "Could be a few hours, could be longer. But we're safe here. We have shelter, we have warm clothes, we have food. We just need to be patient." "I'm sorry we caused all this trouble," the other student, Mia, said. "If we had just come back when we were supposed to." "You made a mistake," Evelyn said, "but that's how we learn. The important thing is you're safe now, and next time you'll communicate better about your plans." As the storm raged outside, Evelyn kept the students talking, telling stories, sharing experiences. She knew from her Coast Guard training that keeping people mentally engaged helped prevent panic and kept them focused on the present rather than worrying about things they could not control. She found herself telling them about some of her Coast Guard experiences, not the traumatic ones, but the interesting ones. The time they rescued a family from a yacht that had lost its rudder. The time they intercepted a boat full of illegally caught lobsters. The time they helped a baby be born on a ship that was too far from shore to reach a hospital in time. The students listened, fascinated, their fear gradually replaced by interest. "Why did you leave the Coast Guard?" Emma asked. Evelyn paused. A month ago, she would have deflected this question, but now, after everything, she answered honestly. "I lost someone on a mission. Someone I cared about and worked with for years. It wasn't my fault. The investigation found that I made all the right decisions, but I couldn't accept that. I blamed myself. So I left." "Do you regret leaving?" Mia asked. "Sometimes," Evelyn said. "I gave up something I loved because I was afraid. But I also learned and grew from that experience. And eventually, I found my way back to doing this kind of work, just in a different context. Life doesn't always go the way we plan, but sometimes that's okay." Hours passed. The storm showed no signs of letting up. Evelyn checked in regularly with the other tents via radio. Everyone was cold and uncomfortable, but safe. As evening approached, the rain finally began to ease. The wind was still strong, but the worst seemed to have passed. "Team 1, this is command!" Ranger Rodriguez's voice crackled over the radio. "Weather Service says the storm is moving through faster than expected. You should have a window of calmer conditions in the next hour or so. Can you make it out tonight?" Evelyn assessed the situation. Her team was tired, cold, and it would be getting dark soon. But they were also all healthy and capable. The trail, while muddy, was not technically difficult, and staying out here another night meant more risk of hypothermia and other complications. "Command, we can make it out," Evelyn said. "We'll pack up and start moving in 30 minutes. Should reach the trailhead by 9 p.m. "Copy that. We'll have vehicles waiting with warm food and medical personnel to check everyone out." "Good work, Team 1. Evelyn gathered everyone together. "Okay, folks, we're hiking out. It's going to be dark, cold, and muddy. It won't be fun, but we can do this. Stay together, watch your footing, and help each other. We'll be back to civilization in a few hours." They broke camp and started hiking. True to Evelyn's prediction, it was a miserable experience. The trail was a river of mud. Tree branches, knocked down by the wind, blocked the path in places. In the darkness, even with flashlights, it was hard to see where to step. But the group worked together. When someone slipped, others helped them up. When someone got tired, others encouraged them. Evelyn led from the front, setting the pace and finding the safest route. After 3.5 hours of hiking, they finally saw lights ahead. The parking lot where vehicles and people were waiting. As they emerged from the trail, muddy, exhausted, but safe, they were met by cheers from the waiting crowd. Parents of the students rushed forward to hug their children. Rangers and sheriff's deputies congratulated the search team. Someone wrapped a blanket around Evelyn's shoulders. Sheriff Wilson approached her with a smile. "Outstanding work, Evelyn. You brought everyone home safe." "We all did it," Evelyn said, but she was smiling too. It was a team effort. The next morning, Evelyn slept in for the first time in years. She was sore, tired, and her feet had blisters from hiking in wet boots. But she felt good. Deeply, profoundly good. Around noon, she finally got up and made coffee. As she sat in her Airstream, looking out at the forest that was now clean and fresh after the storm, her phone rang. It was a number she did not recognize. "Hello?" Commander Marsh? This is Admiral Patricia Chen from the Coast Guard. Evelyn sat up straighter, surprised. Admiral, what can I do for you? Well, actually, I was calling to see if there's anything we can do for you. I read about your search and rescue operation yesterday. Impressive work. And it got me curious about you, so I looked up your file. Commander Evelyn Marsh, retired 2001 after 35 years of distinguished service. Yes, ma'am. Your record is exemplary, Commander. Multiple commendations, successful leadership of one of our busiest stations. But then you retired suddenly. The file notes mention it was following a difficult rescue operation where we lost Lieutenant Morrison. Evelyn's throat tightened. Yes, ma'am. I just want you to know, Commander, and I'm speaking now as someone who has led many rescue operations myself, that sometimes we lose people despite our best efforts. The sea is unforgiving. Storms are unpredictable. And leadership means making the best decisions we can with imperfect information. You did that. Lieutenant Morrison's death was a tragedy, not a failure on your part. Thank you, Admiral, Evelyn managed to say. The reason I'm calling is to ask if you'd be interested in coming back in a consulting capacity. Not active duty, but perhaps helping train the next generation of Coast Guard rescuers. Your experience and expertise are too valuable to be lost. And from what I read about yesterday, you clearly still have the skills and the passion for this work. Evelyn was stunned. She had never imagined the Coast Guard would reach out to her again. Admiral, I'm honored. Can I think about it? Of course. Take your time. But please consider it seriously. We need people like you, Commander Marsh. After the call ended, Evelyn sat quietly for a long time. So much had changed in the past few months. She had gone from hiding her past to sharing it, from avoiding responsibility to embracing it, from seeing herself as broken to recognizing she was whole. And now this, a chance to reconnect with the Coast Guard, not as the person she had been, but as the person she had become. Over the next few days, the story of the rescue spread beyond Cedarwick. Local news covered it. The university wrote an article thanking the search team. The students' parents sent grateful letters and gifts. But the most meaningful response came from within the community. The town council held a special meeting and officially recognized Evelyn for her service to Cedarwick, not just for this rescue, but for 25 years of being a valued member of the community. Mayor Henderson, yes, the father of the family who had stayed at the campground on that first night of the season, gave a speech. Evelyn Marsh came to our town 25 years ago, he said, standing in the crowded community center. She bought the campground and became part of our community. For all those years, she quietly served us well, running the campground with professionalism and care. But what many of us didn't know was that before coming here, Evelyn had a distinguished career in the Coast Guard, where she saved countless lives and led with honor. He continued, Evelyn never sought recognition for her past or her skills. She was content to simply be a good neighbor and a valued community member. But when crisis came, when our neighbors' children were in danger, Evelyn stepped forward without hesitation. She used her skills, her experience, and her leadership to bring those students home safely. The audience applauded. Evelyn, sitting in the front row between Molly and Tom, felt her eyes getting moist. So tonight, the mayor said, we want to officially recognize Evelyn Marsh as an honorary citizen of Cedarwick. Not that she wasn't already a citizen, but this recognizes her exceptional contribution to our community. And we want to thank her, not just for this recent rescue, but for 25 years of quiet service, and for reminding us all that heroes often walk among us unrecognized. As Evelyn accepted the plaque and stood before the community, she found herself thinking about Frank Morrison. She thought about the young lieutenant who had disappeared into the storm 25 years ago, and she realized something important. Frank would not have wanted her to spend her life in guilt and hiding. He would have wanted her to keep using her skills, to keep helping people, to keep being the leader and rescuer she had always been. The best way to honor his memory was not to retreat from the work they had both loved, but to continue it in whatever way she could. "Thank you," Evelyn said to the assembled crowd. 25 years ago, I came to Cedarwick because I was running away from something painful. I thought I was broken and that I needed to hide. But this community welcomed me without knowing my past. You accepted me as I was. And slowly, with your kindness and patience, you helped me heal." She paused, composing her thoughts. "The truth is, I was a Coast Guard commander. I led search and rescue operations for years. I saved many lives, but I also lost some. And losing people hurt so much that I convinced myself I should never put myself in that position again. But what I learned recently is that hiding from pain also means hiding from purpose. And life without purpose isn't really living. So I want to thank you all for being the kind of community where someone like me could find refuge, could heal, and eventually could rediscover who they really are. And I want to promise you that I'll continue to use whatever skills and experience I have to serve this community that has given me so much." The applause was long and warm. People stood up, many with tears in their eyes. Molly squeezed her hand. Later that night, back at the campground, Evelyn sat on the porch of her Airstream. The October stars were brilliant overhead. The air was crisp and cold, and the forest was quiet except for the sound of the river in the distance. She thought about Admiral Chen's offer. She thought about the emergency response team training she had been doing. She thought about Ranger Rodriguez's request for help with search and rescue protocols. She thought about all the ways, big and small, that she could continue to use her skills and experience. She was 68 years old. Most people her age were fully retired, maybe playing golf or traveling. But Evelyn did not feel old. She felt, for the first time in decades, fully alive. She pulled out her phone and wrote an email to Admiral Chen. "Dear Admiral Chen, thank you for your offer to consult for the Coast Guard. I would be honored to help train the next generation of rescuers. I have learned that hiding our gifts and experiences serves no one. I'm ready to step forward again. Please let me know how I can best serve." She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she sat back and looked up at the stars, feeling at peace. The campground would close for the season in a few weeks. Winter would come to Cedarwick, and in the spring, she would open again, welcoming campers to this beautiful place. But now she would also have other work to do: training, consulting, mentoring, using the skills and knowledge from her years of service to help others. Not as Commander Marsh trying to recapture past glory, and not as Evelyn, the campground operator hiding from her past, but as Evelyn Marsh, a complete person who had learned that all our experiences, even the painful ones, can be used for good. 25 years ago, a terrible storm had taken someone she cared about and broken something inside her. A few months ago, another storm had threatened lives, but had been met by her skills and courage. And in facing that second storm, Evelyn had finally found her way back to herself. She had spent 25 years learning a hard lesson: that failure is not the same as tragedy, that guilt is not the same as responsibility, and that hiding from pain means also hiding from joy, purpose, and connection. But she had learned it at last. And now, at 68 years old, with silver hair and a lifetime of experiences behind her, Evelyn Marsh was ready for whatever came next. The stars continued to shine. The river continued to flow. And in her small Airstream trailer in the mountains of Cedarwick, a hero who had forgotten she was a hero had finally remembered. 5 years later. It was a warm spring morning in 2030 when Evelyn Marsh stood at the entrance to the Cedarwick campground, now entering its 30th season under her management. She was 73 years old, her hair completely silver, her face lined with age and experience, but her eyes as sharp and clear as ever. The campground had changed over the years. She had added more facilities, improved the trails, and upgraded the website to make reservations easier. But the essential character of the place remained the same: a peaceful refuge in the mountains where people could connect with nature and find rest from their busy lives. Evelyn herself had changed even more than the campground. She now spent half her time in Cedarwick running the campground and half her time traveling to Coast Guard facilities around the country, teaching and consulting. She had developed a training program on crisis leadership that was now standard curriculum at the Coast Guard Academy. She had written a manual on search and rescue operations in mountainous terrain that was used by park services nationwide. But perhaps the biggest change was personal. Evelyn had learned to open her heart again. She had deep friendships now, including with Molly, who at 84 still met her for coffee every week. She had mentored dozens of young people interested in careers in emergency services. She had become an active, valued, integral part of the Cedarwick community in ways that went far beyond just running a business. On this particular morning, a car pulled into the parking lot. A man in his late 40s got out, followed by a teenage girl, maybe 16 years old. "Evelyn!" the man called, walking over with a warm smile. It took Evelyn a moment, then recognition dawned. Robert? Robert Chen? The same! Robert was beaming. "I can't believe I finally made it back. I've been meaning to return ever since my unfortunate first visit, but life got busy. This is my daughter, Lily." "Nice to meet you," Lily said shyly. "I've told her the story 100 times," Robert explained. "How I got injured hiking and how you led the rescue team that saved me. She wanted to meet the hero who pulled her dad out of the forest." "I'm hardly a hero," Evelyn said, though she was smiling. "But I'm glad you're both here. Are you staying at the campground?" "If you have room. I want to show Lily the trails, the safe, marked ones this time, and I promise we have proper equipment, communication devices, and we'll stick to all the safety protocols you taught me about." "I'm sure you will," Evelyn laughed. As she helped them check in, Robert said, "You know, that experience changed my life. Not just because I learned about hiking safety, though I certainly did. But that night in the cabin, and then the days recovering here at the campground, talking with you. Those conversations made me rethink a lot of things. I was so busy traveling, always moving, never settling anywhere. I realized I was running from something too." "Oh?" "I was running from loneliness, from commitment, from putting down roots. After I left here, I went home and really thought about what I wanted. Eventually, I met my now wife, we had Lily, and we built a real life together. So in a way, you rescued me twice, once from the forest and once from myself." Evelyn felt touched by his words. "I think you rescued yourself, Robert. I just helped you along the way. Maybe. But I'll always be grateful." After they drove off to their campsite, Evelyn stood for a moment, reflecting. She thought about all the people who had passed through this campground over 30 years. Thousands of families, couples, solo travelers, each with their own stories, their own struggles, their own journeys. She thought about Frank Morrison, who would have been in his 70s now if he had lived. She still missed him, still thought about him, but without the crushing guilt that had once accompanied those memories. Frank had been a good man, a brave officer, and a dear friend. His death had been a tragedy, but it had not been her failure. She had finally, truly accepted that. She thought about Commander Evelyn Marsh, the person she had been before that terrible night. That woman had been competent, skilled, and confident, but also somewhat rigid, somewhat closed off, unwilling to show vulnerability or accept limitations. And she thought about the Evelyn who had first arrived in Cedarwick, broken and hiding, running from her past and afraid of her future. She was neither of those people now. She was someone new, forged from both experiences, tempered by pain and healed by time and community. She was stronger because she had been broken and had learned to put herself back together. She was wiser because she had failed and had learned that failure was not fatal. She was more open because she had been closed and had learned that walls keep out love as surely as they keep out pain. Molly's car pulled up. The older woman got out carefully, using a cane now, but still spry and sharp. "Ready for our coffee?" Molly called. "Always," Evelyn replied. As they settled onto the porch with their mugs, Molly said, "I heard you have a new training assignment coming up." "The Coast Guard Academy? 3-week course?" "Yes. Starting next month, I'll teach crisis leadership to the new officer candidates." "That's wonderful. They're lucky to have you." "I'm lucky to have the opportunity," Evelyn said. 10 years ago, 5 years ago even, I would never have imagined I'd be doing this. Teaching young officers, sharing my experience, contributing to the Coast Guard again. It feels like I've come full circle." "Not a circle," Molly corrected gently. "A spiral. You're not back where you started. You're in a new place, higher up, with a better view. You've grown." "That's a nice way to put it." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the morning sun rise higher over the mountains. A family was setting up their tent in one of the sites. Children's laughter echoed through the campground. A dog barked happily. Life continued its peaceful rhythm. "Do you ever think about retiring?" Molly asked. "Selling the campground, taking it easy?" "Sometimes," Evelyn admitted, "but not seriously. This place is part of who I am now, and the teaching, the consulting work with the Coast Guard, that's part of who I am too. I guess I've learned that I'm happiest when I'm useful, when I'm using what I know to help others. Not because I'm trying to prove something or make up for past failures, but just because it's what I'm good at and what gives my life meaning." "That's the secret, isn't it?" Molly said. "Finding meaning. Not happiness exactly. Happiness comes and goes. But meaning, purpose, the sense that what we do matters. That's what keeps us going." "Yes," Evelyn agreed. "I spent too many years just existing, just getting through days without really living them. I don't want to waste any more time doing that." "You're 73, Molly pointed out. "You could have a lot of years left. What do you want to do with them?" Evelyn thought about the question. "I want to keep doing this, running the campground, teaching, helping when I'm needed. I want to mentor young people who are interested in emergency services. I want to continue working on improving search and rescue procedures. And I want to spend time with friends, with community, with people I care about. I want to live each day fully, not running from the past or worrying about the future, but being present in the now." "That sounds perfect," Molly said. A thought occurred to Evelyn. "You know what? I've been thinking about writing a book, about search and rescue, about leadership, about learning from failure. Not an autobiography exactly, but something that shares the lessons I've learned. Do you think anyone would be interested in reading it?" "I think many people would," Molly said. "There are so many people who are struggling with failure, with guilt, with the feeling that they've made mistakes they can't recover from. Your story, that you can fail, that you can make mistakes, that terrible things can happen, and you can still move forward, still find meaning, still contribute. That's a story people need to hear." "Maybe I will then. I'll need something to do during the winter when the campground is closed." They finished their coffee and said their goodbyes. Molly drove back to town, and Evelyn returned to her work, checking on the new campers, maintaining facilities, and preparing for what promised to be another busy season. That evening, as the sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in brilliant shades of orange and pink, Evelyn sat on her porch once more. She had her laptop open and was beginning to outline ideas for the book she had mentioned to Molly. Chapter 1, she typed. The Commander. Then she paused, thinking about how to begin the story. Not just her story, but the universal story of anyone who has failed, fallen, and found the courage to rise again. She began to write. The ocean had always been Evelyn Marsh's first love. As the words flowed, Evelyn felt a sense of rightness, of purpose. This was another way she could help people, by sharing her journey, her failures and successes, her pain and healing. If even one person read her story and found hope, found the courage to forgive themselves and move forward, it would be worth the effort. The stars came out, one by one, bright points of light in the darkening sky. The forest around the campground settled into its nighttime rhythms. Somewhere an owl hooted. The river continued its eternal song. And in her Airstream trailer, surrounded by the peaceful mountains of Cedarwick, Evelyn Marsh, retired Coast Guard commander, campground operator, search and rescue consultant, teacher, friend, and survivor of storms both literal and metaphorical, wrote her truth into the darkness, a light for others who might be lost. She had been broken. She had healed. And in that healing, she had discovered that our deepest wounds can become our greatest sources of wisdom and compassion if we have the courage to face them, learn from them, and share them with others. The second storm had come 25 years after the first. But unlike the first storm that had broken her, the second storm had helped put her back together. Not as she had been before, but as something new, something stronger, something more complete. And that, Evelyn realized as she continued writing into the night, was perhaps the most important lesson of all. That we are not defined by our worst moments, but by how we respond to them. That failure is not fatal unless we let it be. That it is never too late to step back into the light, to use our gifts to contribute, to matter. She was 73 years old. She had lived a full life, made mistakes, known triumph and tragedy, love and loss. And she was not done yet, not nearly done. There were more students to teach, more hikers to help, more stories to share. There were more sunrises to watch over the mountains, more coffee to drink with Molly, more children to teach about the forest, more seasons to welcome campers to this special place. There was more life to live, and Evelyn Marsh intended to live every moment of it fully, gratefully, courageously. The storm had passed, the sky was clear, and the stars shone bright overhead, guiding the way forward. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We'd love to hear what inspired you the most. And where in the world are you watching from? Let us know below.